December 1975. A small lab in Rochester, New York. A 24-year-old engineer is bent over a workbench, wiring together a machine no one asked him to build. It is the size of a toaster. It weighs 8 pounds. His name is Steven Sasson. He points the thing at an assistant and waits. 23 seconds pass in silence. Then, on a screen across the room, a face appears. Grainy, ghostly, made of nothing but light and numbers. Sasson has just built the first digital camera. He is standing inside the company that will one day be destroyed by it. This is the story of the company that invented the future, and then refused to sell it. To understand what Sasson was standing inside of, you have to go back almost 100 years. To a bank clerk in Rochester named George Eastman. Photography in his day was heavy, wet, and impossible for ordinary people. Glass plates, toxic chemicals, tripods taller than a child. Eastman had one simple idea. What if anyone could do it? In 1888, he sold a small box camera, already loaded with film, for $25. You took 100 pictures, mailed the whole camera back, and Kodak did the rest. That was the promise, printed on the box. You press the button, we do the rest. In one sentence, he had invented the amateur photograph. And an empire. What Eastman built next was not just a camera company. It was a machine for making money that would run for a century. Here is the trick. He sold the cameras cheap. In 1900, a camera called the Brownie cost $1. Almost anyone could own one. But the film inside it, and the developing, and the printing, you bought that again and again and again. The camera was the bait. The film was the fortune. Every birthday, every wedding, every holiday on Earth ran through Kodak's yellow boxes. By 1976, Kodak sold 90% of all the film in America and 85% of the cameras. For most of a century, if you had a memory worth keeping, Kodak sold you the way to keep it. Which brings us back to that lab and that 8-pound machine. Sasson's camera worked. It captured a real image with no film at all and stored it as pure data. He had, quite literally, invented the end of film. So he did what any engineer does. He showed his bosses. Picture the room. The executives who ran the most profitable film business on Earth, watching a machine that needed no film. As Sasson later remembered it, the reaction was polite and quietly fatal. That is cute, they told him, but do not tell anyone about it. They were not fools. They understood exactly what it was. That is precisely why they buried it. Why kill the thing that prints your money? For a while, burying it seemed to work. Kodak kept growing. Look at the numbers now because you will not see them again. By 1988, Kodak employed 145,000 people around the world. A city wearing one company's name. In 1996, its revenue reached its highest point ever. Nearly $16 billion in a single year. 3 years later, its profit peaked near $2.5 billion. It was one of the most valuable, most trusted brands on the planet. From the outside, Kodak looked untouchable. But inside, the thing it had buried in 1975 was quietly clawing its way back to the surface. Now, it is tempting to say Kodak was blind. It wasn't. The truth is stranger and more human. Kodak did not ignore digital. It filed patents. It built research. In 1991, it even sold one of the first professional digital cameras to photographers. Kodak could see the wave coming from miles away. It simply could not bring itself to write it. Because every digital sale was a knife in the film business, and the film business paid for everything. The factories, the pensions, the 145,000 jobs. To embrace digital fully, Kodak would have to burn down the very thing that made it rich. So it hesitated. It half-committed. It hedged. And out in the world, its rivals did not hesitate at all. Then the ground gave way. In 1997, a Japanese rival named Fuji cut its prices hard, and Kodak's grip on America slipped in a single year. Its share of the market fell from 80% towards 75%, and its revenue dropped by more than 9% almost overnight. Then came the real flood. By 2001, for the first time, Americans bought more digital cameras than film cameras. The tide Kodak had feared for 25 years had finally arrived. And every picture taken on a digital sensor was a picture that would never need film, never need developing, never need a yellow box. The fortune Eastman built on the button and the film and the doing of the rest was quietly running dry. This is what a falling empire looks like. In 1996, revenue peaked near $16 billion. By 2001, it had slipped to $13. For a moment it steadied. By 2005, it still clung to $14 billion, the year digital finally outsold film inside Kodak itself. But that milestone came too late and the margins were thin. Then the floor fell away. $9 billion by 2008, barely $7 billion by 2010. In 14 years, one of the great fortunes of the 20th century had been cut in half and was still falling. And a line on a chart never tells you about the people underneath it. So let me tell you about the people underneath it. Between 2003 and 2011, Kodak cut roughly 47,000 jobs. 13 factories closed. 130 photo labs went dark. The company town in Rochester, where families had worked for generations, began to empty. In 2009, Kodak stopped making Kodachrome, the beloved color film it had sold for 74 years. And on a December day in 2010, Kodak was quietly removed from the S&P 500 after 53 years on the list. The brand that had photographed the American century was being erased from the record of it. The fall was almost complete. On January 19, 2012, it ended. Eastman Kodak filed for bankruptcy protection. The company that once employed a city now owed more than it owned. $6.75 billion in debt, more than 100,000 creditors. A 132-year-old empire kept alive on emergency financing. And here is the cruelest detail. In its final years, one of the only things still making Kodak real money was licensing its digital imaging patents. The very patents that traced back to that 8-pound machine in 1975. The invention it buried to save the film business was now the only thing keeping the film business alive. The future it refused to sell had come back to pay for its funeral. The final irony arrived at the end of 2012. To pay its debts, Kodak sold off its crown jewels, its digital imaging patents. The price? Around $525 million. And look who lined up to buy them. Apple, Google, Samsung, Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon. The companies that had built their empires on digital pictures, on phones with cameras, on a world without film. They bought the future from the company that had invented it and been too afraid to sell it. Kodak dug the treasure up in 1975, then handed it, for scraps, to the very giants who used it to bury Kodak. The wave it saw coming had finally closed over its head. So is Kodak gone? Not entirely. In September 2013, a much smaller Kodak walked out of bankruptcy. It gave up the cameras, the consumer film, the empire of memories. Today it survives quietly, printing packaging and commercial images, a fraction of what it was. The yellow name still exists, but the company that once sold you every memory you ever kept no longer sits in your hands. And Steven Sasson, the young engineer they told to stay quiet? In 2010, the President of the United States gave him the National Medal of Technology for inventing the very thing his own company was too afraid to sell. Kodak's story is taught now in business schools around the world, and the lesson is not the one you would expect. Kodak did not fall because it failed to see the future. It saw it first. It held the future in its own hands, in a lab, in 1975. It fell because the thing that made it rich would not let it become something new. The film was the fortune, and the fortune was the trap. To save its future, Kodak would have had to destroy its present, and it simply could not do it. Every empire believes it will be the one to ride the next wave. Kodak invented the wave itself and still drowned in it. If you want to know which giant made the very same mistake next, subscribe, because here we open the tapes the giants would rather keep closed. This was the Industry Tapes.